inside. Light your candle, call its name. It will be there in the flame. Spirit will hear your heart. Spirit will feel and see. Spirit will hear you sing. Ooh, Spirit is listening. When you will it to be true, it will take good care of you. Sing your song and dream your dream. It will be there in the stream. Spirit will hear your heart. Spirit will feel and see. Spirit will hear you sing. Ooh, Spirit is listening. Tell me if you can relate to this. Remember those days when we used to spin? I still like to spin like that. I was thinking about that spinning gesture and that playful act of spinning and getting out of my serious mind and into a playful mode like that. And I think something vitally important happens when and I venture to say we, make that choice to play like that. I think we access something that we might be hiding too often, something a little bit more real than this thing here and that thing there. Because I feel when I spin like that, I access a part of myself that's truer, like a truth with a capital T of who I am. And it's a little bit more like an eagle than a man. It's something besides what I see out there, something besides what I'm hearing and feeling. It's something more to who I am. And that action of spinning is one of the ways I get there. I think that action of laughing hysterically gets me there. I think that action of dreaming gets me there there to that truth. And it's not just the spinning And that sensation of being dizzy and perceiving something different that makes me think that's true for me and for us. But it's something more. I was I was looking at that action of spinning in a lot of different lenses through the process of calling in this story and creating an intention behind it. And there was a really interesting thing that happened in my life when I was 16. It had a lot to do with spinning. My dad slipped into a whirlpool in a river, and his body never surfaced. And I was downstream. I wasn't directly with him, but my brother was. And when my brother told me what happened, and he said those words, "Dad's dead," I was furiously angry, and I never heard such an offensive statement. And my brother had to explain he fell into a whirlpool. And that didn't, again, that was just nonsense. I had never seen a whirlpool in a river. And I followed him to this place where there was a colossal whirlpool, about as big as a stage. And I could only imagine it, but in my mind, I saw my dad swirling in this whirlpool, spinning like that. And a spin is a little bit different from a swirl, but it's kind of similar. I was haunted by that vision for a long time. Actually, it wasn't long in terms of years, but in terms of the amount of emotional turmoil that it caused me. It was big for me. It was long in that way. And I saw a psychiatrist, and he did this thing with a magic wand, a light to help me overcome the burden of that. Sometimes I wish I wouldn't have done that, but that action was called EMDR, EDMR, I don't remember. It helped me to live my life, and that was the idea. But somehow in the spinning and that vision, it felt like a access point to my dad in a way, and I regretted that I didn't have that anymore. But that wasn't the truth with the capital T of where my dad was. I think he ascended to another state. I think he became a little bit in everything. I feel my dad's presence in this golden glint in my ring sometimes. And when I think about golden eagles, I think about my dad. The action of spinning surfaced on a couple of other occasions too. One of them was when my daughter arrived, and we had to spin her inside her mom's belly. We had a home birth, and there was a concern that she was stuck. And having a home birth, there's no one to tell us it's time for a C-section or anything like that. That wasn't an option. But the doula, she had this genius move of wrapping my baby's mom's belly in a cloth where we could gently do this motion. And we were energetically rotating the baby like that for maybe like an hour, just real gentle. And yeah, that baby spun right into the world like that. I got to catch my baby. And I remember when she rolled over in bed, and that was a monumental experience to see that too. And there's times now when she and her younger brother, they hold me in their arms and I lift them up, and their legs go out. I was thinking about in that spin, uh, my motion was pretty limited. I can spin right in the middle of the dance floor sometimes, 100 miles an hour. But like with the kids' legs out, can't do that in a crowd. But um, I had the pleasure of taking a dance class one time called Dancing with Rumi, and it had us spinning like that. It was the only time I've ever been instructed to spin like that, and it was a weekend retreat, thankfully, so I had a lot of practice at it and a lot of time contemplating that and why we do that. And the tradition comes from Sufi culture, and it's a way of from what I understand, connecting with God or spirit or truth with a capital T, a realer part of ourselves, like a true part of ourselves, accessible in that state. And in that case, we're still in our body. Sometimes people put their hands out in front of their face so they don't trip and fall. But that can be kind of like a guide. I'm okay. But I just want to speak this out loud because a lot of my life I have been playing that role of a serious person and a workaholic, and a lot of things that were not true to me with a capital T, not true, not love with a capital L, but just kind of like a grind or like a striving or pursuit of the American dream. And I think it's about time we have a new definition of an American dream. And I hope it has a lot to do with authenticity and artistry and vulnerability. And a couple of times lately, I found myself crying, and I actually really like that part of myself that does that. I've had some really strong mentors in my life tell me I don't have to do that, and it's kind of like a sign of weakness, but I don't think that's true. I have my own definition of truth anyway. But I'm grateful for this day and this time of year when the culture is like culturally acceptable to think about the afterlife and talk about death and loved ones on the other side of the veil. I sometimes forget I have loved ones on this side of the veil that are also with me in spirit. Not to say that I neglect those relationships, but sometimes when I'm connecting with my dad and I'm thanking my dad for his presence in my life, I sometimes remember that my mom's with me right now too. And I love that. There's been a couple of times when I put myself way out there and I spun a little bit too hard, spun a little bit too fast. On one hand, I have a friend who's a ballerina, and she said, in ballet, when someone falls, when they crash, is like the ultimate experience in ballet because someone's stretching so far, a little bit too far. And it's the highest honor. And on another hand, sometimes I imagine we go a little bit too far out with maybe emotional outbursts or experiments with plant medicines or overindulgence in ego, whatever it is. I happen to have a couple of ego deaths 1 year, 4 different times. I had a kind of like a real hard, not so much hard, but eye-opening experience that brought me a little bit closer to my truth. And one of them feels appropriate to share. I said yes to this and this and this, and I found myself in a tipi, and there I was a blade of grass in an ocean of grasses, or a vast field, an infinite field of grasses. I was one grass blade. And there was no striving, no pursuit of anything, just a gentle sway among all of us grass blades, just gently swaying. It was the most peaceful feeling. It was the ultimate freedom for me. I didn't have to strive. I didn't have to try so hard. I didn't have to work all those hours. I didn't have to be separated from my loved ones. We were all there. We were all in this together. We were all a part of something. I could feel the interconnection below, actually. And it was so pleasant like that. And then kind of like snapped out of it because one of my friends took me in his arm and he's like, "Hey brother, you're walking around the teepee making whale sounds. Can I take you into the sweat lodge and pray for you?" And he did that. A bunch of my brothers gathered around me like that and tried to take care of me like that. And some people sing a lot of songs and splashed water on my face from a buffalo horn. And I heard them praying and meditating and asking themselves if I was going to be okay and if I was going to come back to my body and everything like that. And someone had the good common sense to invite me to come back into my body. And I realized at that moment I had a choice. I had this choice to continue experiencing the ultimate freedom like that. Ascend all the way to be with my dad in whatever state that is. It's a mystery to me. But I welcome it. Or come back and be a dad to these kids who I love and continue to love and respect their mom like that. And so I chose that route. And I'm really glad I did. And each of those options was just as desirable for me. I have, in conclusion, I'm seeing that I carry around this truth with a capital T and this love with a capital L. And I also play a lot of roles in life, and I do a lot of juggling, and I run a lot of races and stuff like that. Play a lot of roles, and have a lot of people who love me. I care about a lot of people. And a lot of that stuff is just a story, and I value the story. I don't mean to diminish the quality of the story and telling a story like that, but I'm just saying a lot of what I'm carrying is a story, but there's something true behind the story, beyond the story. There's something real about me and us. And this is a good time of year, I think. I know this is a good time of year to access that truth, that love, that soul. To me, there's only perfection in the soul state. And I know that we can remember that and walk in that way. Even here on earth, to me, that's heaven on earth. This last song I want to share, I want to just honor my mom. She used to play Pachelbel, Canon in D on the piano, and that's, I think, the seed of inspiration for this song. It's a gratitude expression. When the wind blows heavily, I lift my voice to the heavenly. Those angels, those egos, those spirits with a soaring. When the fire burns heavily, I lift my hands to the heavenly. Those golden glowing rays of sunshine, those smoky smudges satisfying. When the waves crash heavily, I lay my heart on the heavenly. Those water lilies, those mermaids, those gray blue whales, they're swimming. Heavily. Heavenly. When the earth shakes heavily, I lay my head on the heavenly. Wild roses, wild raspberries, wild